So today is Sunday, Yud Beis Cheshvan Tofshin Ayin Zayin. The last time we met, it was Tofshin Ayin Vov. Yep. So it's Yud Beis Cheshvan Tofshin Ayin Zayin. We are in Teres Menachem, Sefer of Hamamorim Tofshin Yud Gimel, in the Maimer of Yud Shvat Tofshin Yud Gimel. We are on page Pei Gimel. We are 4 lines from the bottom of the full stop. Okay. A quick synopsis. This is the famous Maimer Basi Legani. The Rebbe over here addresses the 3rd chapter of the Friedrich Rebbe's Basi Legani Tofshin Yud, and he focuses mainly on the idea of the shtus, the le'umazeh, and the shtus de kedusha, right? Chazal say that a person transgresses only because of the fact that a spirit of folly enters into him, because naturally it is impossible for a yid to go against Hashem's will, because of the fact that every transgression is a separation from Hashem. And just like a yid cannot generally separate from Hashem in terms of, for example, avodah zarah, idolatry, every transgression in a sense is the same thing. It's just that he doesn't feel that through the transgressing he becomes separated from Hashem. Why doesn't he feel that? That's because of the ruach shtus. That's the spirit of folly. Then the Rebbe went into a whole discussion about avodah zarah and shituf, partnership, whether that the Umas Ha'olam are not commanded on partnership. Yidden are prohibited also in partnership, to believe in partnership. In other words, because so far as Yid is concerned, there is only the Eibishter himself, and everything else has no independent existence or will. Everything is like all the other hosts and planets and forces are only like a axe in the hands of the chopper. And the Rebbe basically, at the end of Dalid, explained that in this aspect of not being able to be separated from Hashem, every Yid is equal, whether it is the greatest Yid, good morning, or the simplest Yid. The greatest Yid and the simplest Yid are equal in this fact that, so far as being separated from Hashem, when one becomes consciously aware of that, they cannot do that. And why is that? Because that comes from the Yechida Shebenefesh. And on the Yechida Shebenefesh, there is no Ruach Shtus, there is no spirit of folly that could conceal. The Ruach Shtus could conceal Nefesh, could conceal Ruach, could conceal Neshama, could conceal Chaya, the 4 lower aspects of the soul. But when it comes to Yechida Shebenefesh, it cannot. And the Rebbe said it is the nature of every Jew that he does not want and cannot be separated from Göttlichkeit. Rebbe often quotes this in the name of the Alter Rebbe. Why is that indeed? Why, in fact, when it comes to Yechida Shebenefesh, why, when it comes to all other levels of the soul, there is the possibility for concealment of the Ruach Shtus, the cover of the Ruach Shtus, whereas when it comes to Yechida, there isn't? Why is it the nature? When we say it is the nature of a Yid that he does not want and cannot be separated from Göttlichkeit, what does it mean, the nature? As a result of which he cannot be separated from Göttlichkeit. And because of that, they're all equal. Says the Rebbe, the reason is, says the Rebbe because he quotes from the Eitz Chaim that there is a small spark of Boirei, of the Creator, that clothes itself in the one spark of the created, which is called Yechida. Meaning to say that when it comes to Yechida Shebenefesh, the highest level of the soul, in it is inserted a spark of the Creator, part of Hashem. That's the definition of Chelik Elaka. Chelik Elaka min Mal Mamish. It's actually part of Hashem, pure Hashem in his state of Hashemness, as it were, that is inserted into the Yechida Shebenefesh of every person. And obviously Hashem cannot go against himself. So because that is inserted within the Yechida Shebenefesh of every single Yid, known in the vernacular as the Pintele Yid, that's why a Yid can't go against Hashem. So that's why it's his nature that he cannot be separated from the Eibishter. What's the issue was?
I mean, the Yud, the Eibishter has the capacity to be and not to be. I mean, so when you say the Pintele Yid,
what does it mean not to be? What does it mean not to be?
Not to create and not to create.
But this is not creation. We're talking about creator.
I understand.
He's connected to him.
Yeah.
Whatever state, whatever it is, but he's connected to him. A person can't go against himself. A person that fights against himself is either has an autoimmune disease or is mentally ill. Right? The natural state of a human being is that he can't go against himself. So if the nature of a Yid is, if inserted in the Yichlish of Nefesh is part of Hashem, a nitzutz, a spark of Hashem, then he has to remain connected. Says the Rebbe, that's where the long discussion in Pei Gimel, in Hey, on page Pei Gimel, we had this whole discussion about, if you remember, the quarry of souls and the quarry of spheres in Ak. Right? The Rebbe said we do find, it would seem that there should be differences. What's the point? The Rebbe is trying to make a point that in this idea, that's why there can't be a Ruach Shtus that covers it up, and that's why every Yid is equal, whether it's the greatest Yid or the smallest Yid, because everybody has that nitzutz Beire inserted in the Yechidish B'Nefesh. Obviously, it doesn't always come to the fore. Very rarely comes to the fore, in a conscious way. But when it does, it's all powerful. It penetrates breaks through all barriers. It penetrates the mind. It penetrates the heart. It's a whole different situation. Says the Rebbe, but it would seem that there should be differences because we know that the source of the neshama is from Pnimius Hakelim of Atzilus, which going higher is from the quarry of souls, which are the levushim, garments, to the quarry of spheres. These are all terms that are used in describing what goes on in Ak. It's Kabbalistic, so let's not get too lost in it. But when we talk about the source of the neshama, so in other words, we go from stage to stage. We know that the neshamas are born from the Yechudim in Atzilus, right? From the spheres of Atzilus, actual neshamas come forth as neshamas, as actual neshamas. However, you can trace it back all the way, going back to Atzmos, as it were, right? Because as he says, the source of the Yid's neshama is rooted in Atzmos, the very essence of Hashem. But from there it goes into Ak, through the Tzimtzum and so on and so forth. Where does it end up? It ends up in the quarry of souls, which is a garment to the quarry of spheres of Ak, right? From there it transmits on, later on, through further Ishtashalos, to Atzilus. In which aspect of Atzilus? The Pnimius HaKelim, the inner dimension of the Kelim of Atzilus, and ultimately it becomes a Neshama. Says the Rebbe, we know Kelim denote his Chalkus. Kelim is fragmentation. Where does the fragmentation come from? Mainly from the Kelim. So if the soul is from Pnimius HaKelim, so it's Kelim, so it's fragmentation. And even going higher when it comes to Ak, you're talking about the quarry of souls which are levushim to the spheres. So again we're talking about fragmentation. So why are you telling me there are no differences? That was the point of the Rebbe's question. Says the Rebbe, the key note of it, the key point over here is that it's Pnimius HaKelim, the inner dimension of the Kelim. The inner dimension of the Keli and the external dimension of the Keli are fundamentally different. The inner dimension of Keli is fused with the very essence of the Oir, much like when you talk about a physical Keli, a physical cup, for example. Which part of the cup does the liquid touch?
Yeah.
What's in the cup? The inside, the inner wall. The outer wall, it's there, but it doesn't touch the outer part of the wall doesn't touch the content of the Keli. Similarly, in the spiritual sense, the inner dimension of the Keli fuses with the inner dimension of the Oir.
Right. There's an outer dimension of the aura as well.
There is, yes, because when we talk about Hashpah, for example, what comes down, particularly, for example, when it comes to Malchus, Tzidus and Sfidus also, there's the aspect of that which remains above, and there's that which is transmitted onwards. What's transmitted onwards is a ha'ara. It's an emanation, it's a ray. The Pnimius HaKeli, the Pnimius HaOir, the point that Rebbe makes is that the Pnimius HaOir retains its uniqueness and its essentialness.
There's a difference between an outer dimension of light and an aspect of light.
Correct, but the aspect of the light comes from the outer dimension of the light. So that's how it.
Yeah.
For example, when it comes to Bria, Chesed the Bria.
Because the ray is inside the orb. It doesn't exist. It's one. So if you talk,
It exists, but it's
about an aspect, which means a reduced amount of the light. I can understand. But
Well,
when you talk
now
about,
as well.
when you talk about
It's-
aspect of the light, I don't see that.
It's
I don't
both.
understand
It's both quality and quantity. It's both.
that. Okay.
But the bottom line point that the Rebbe makes is basically that the etzem ha'oir, the very essence of the oir, that remains where the oir is. That fuses with the inner dimension of the keli. What is retained within the etzem ha'oir? Everything going back to the original etzem. So therefore, despite the fact that the neshama is born, created, or born from the yichudim, from the unities of the spheres of Atzilus, Kalim, which is Ischalkus. Nevertheless, it's Pnimius Akli, which fuses with what? With Pnimius Oir, which goes back to the Levushim of Ak, which goes back to the spheres of Ak. But which aspect? The Pnimius. And in that Pnimius, ultimately, is embedded the Atzmus, the very essence. So it's always retained. That's the point that Rebbe makes. That's what the Rebbe says over here. That's where we're up to Kumei Kain. And therefore he said,
Again, bottom 4 lines from
After.
the transmission on through the Chitzeni Sakli, it says, comes through a gap and through a jump. But in the Pnimius Sakli, retains the Etzem, the Pnimius Ha'er, which retains its essentialness. Kumei Kain, you've in the Maila, page Pegimel, 4 lines from the bottom, so too it'll be understood above, V'sherish and Neshamas. In the root of souls, where are souls rooted? The Shorshim Hu Meha'atzmos. They are rooted where? In the very essence of Hashem. Right? And even when it comes to the very essence of the Eir, that Atzmus is drawn down into the Etzem Eir. It retains that essentialness. This drawing down doesn't exist in angels. This specifically exists in souls. Why? Because they are rooted. The neshamas, as they actually become souls, they are rooted where? In the inner dimension of the Kli. Right? We're going now back down to Atzilus. The inner dimension of the Kli is fused and united with the very essence of the Eir, which retains, as we just said, the essentialness within it at every stage. Because they are fused with the very essence of the Eir, therefore they're also fused as one with the root of the Etzem Eir, fun dos fun vanent dem Etzem, top page Dalet, midos fun vanent der Etzem Eir nimmt sich. It's fused with that from which the Etzem Eir emanates, stems from, meaning to say, where does the Etzem Eir stem from? From the essence of Hashem. So therefore, in the Neshama is retained that essentialness that goes back to its original root, as the Etzem Eir is rooted in the very essence of Hashem. And therefore, what's the answer? What was the question? The question was there should be fragmentation because it's from Kalim. Says the Rebbe, Al Pisa Yuvan. According to this, we'll understand the Av Shasherish Hashem is who Meha Kalim, that although the root of souls is indeed from vessels, where in Atzilus, from the Kalim of Atzilus, or going higher to Ak Mimachzev Neshamas, from the quarry of souls in Adam Kadmon, Shu Chitzenius Ak, which is the external dimension of Ak. Mikol Mokim, nonetheless. Nevertheless, since the inner dimension of the Keli, this is where he keeps on going from Atzilus to Ak. Since the way the soul is rooted, where is the soul rooted? In Atzilus. In the inner dimension of the Kelim, and the inner dimension of the Kelim is Miyuchedes im Etzem Eir Kanal, is fused and is united as one with the very essence of the Eir, with the essence of the light of the Sfira. Harehi Miyuchedes Gam im Pnimius Ak. Therefore, ultimately, it is fused as one with what? With the inner dimension of Ak, which is in turn fused with what? Which retains within it what? The inner dimension of the Etzem Eir, and which is rooted in Atzmus.
One thing I don't understand, and that is
One thing, go.
that as far as I understood it, that Atzilus is the first place where Kalim can form and be proper entities, even though they're given over to godliness. So when we go to Ak and we're talking about Kalim,
What are Kalim there?
yeah,
Well, first of all, I don't think it's
we're
possible.
really speaking about 3 dimensions of Kalim.
We are. We're talking about Eir, we're talking about Kalim, we're talking about Levushim, but in Ak, everything is in Ak Bria. When you talk about Bria in Ak or all these things, it's Bebchinas Machshava. Ak is Machshava. So, however, they're all. I mean, talk about Eretz and Kelim and Atzilus. You also cannot talk. As you say, you can sort of start feeling your way. But in Ak, you're talking in a state of machshava. For example, it says that when the Eibishter miyad she'olam b'machshavte miyad nishava. As soon as Hashem, what's the word? As soon as it came up in his mind, as soon as he visualized it, as it were, as soon as he thought about it, it immediately was created. What does that mean? What does it mean immediately was created? It was created by b'chinas machshava.
It was the same thing. It's not two separate things, is it? As he's thinking, it's happening. That we are in the Abish's speech. That's, it's happening.
I was talking about speech.
Yeah, but it's the same way in
Olam Asiya Gashmi, the physical world as it is here. There is the way it is here, physical, but then there is its state the way it is in Ak. B'chinas machshava. It's, you know what it is? It's like a parallel universe. That's what it is. It's a parallel universe. B'machshava.
Yeah.
So what? That's the best I can do. I mean, what are kelim b'chinas machshava? You can understand notionally that you're articulating these dimensions.
I don't get that either. But go on. I don't get your idea of machshava. But it doesn't matter. Let's move on.
Okay. Here the Rebbe says something very interesting. Before we go on, I'll quote to you a medrash. The medrash Rabbi in Breishis says as follows. There was a famous Rosha, his name was Tunus Rufus. He was a Roman emperor, a governor who governed Judea during the times after the Churban Bayis Sheni, the times of the Tanoim. And he once asked Rabbi Akiva about Shabbos. Why is Shabbos different than any other day? So it's a long discussion. There was tit for tat. He says, and why are you different than all men? He says, because the emperor wants to honor me. He says, Hashem wants to honor Shabbos. He went back and forth. He was giving him, he says, you're giving me silly answers. Finally, he said like this. He told him that, Tunus Rufus communicated with his father, who had passed on through the process of oiv, which is prohibited. As you know, oiv in Yudoni is prohibited. But there was a method through which you can communicate with the dead, and he would do that. He says, go and try to communicate with your father on Shabbos. He tried and he couldn't. On the weekday he was able to, on Shabbos he couldn't. He turned to his father on Sunday when he communicated, said, you became Jewish after you died. Anyway, it's a very interesting discussion that went on over there. Finally he realized that Shabbos is different than every other day. It's a Medrash Rabbah. So finally, when he realized that Shabbos is different, he came back to Rabbi Akiva. Says, okay, I concede. Shabbos is different. But if that's the case, that Hashem honors the Shabbos, then he shouldn't make the wind blow on Shabbos. He shouldn't make rain fall, and he shouldn't make grass grow.
Yeah.
Why does he do that? He tells us we're not allowed to do these things. People are not allowed to do these things. And he goes ahead and he's doing these things on Shabbos. So he said to him, he responded very strongly to him in terms of describing his character. And then he said, I'll give you an example. Imagine two people are living in one courtyard. If they don't make an Erev, they're not allowed to carry. If one of them doesn't make an Erev, they're not allowed to carry. You have to make an Erev, Chasedes, in order to be able to carry there. But if there's one person living in his own house, in his courtyard, is he allowed to carry in his courtyard? There's only one person. Of course he is, because it's his. The same thing he said, Hashem he's the only one. It's all his. The whole world is his. So therefore, he's permitted to do all these things. That's what he answered to Tunus Rufus. Comes the Alter Rebbe in the Kutatera and asks a question. How does that answer rainfall? He didn't ask him only about carrying. All the other malachas have nothing to do with carrying. What about rainfall? Making it grow? Makes things grow? Right? How does that answer it? So the Alter Rebbe gives a very interesting answer, and he explains that there's a difference there's a Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, Lamratzei Chalashminis, in Pashas Tazria, talks about Milah. The difference between Milah, circumcision, which is very thematic because of the Pashas that we're learning now, Lech Lecham Vayera, right? Morning. And he explains the difference between Milah and Shabbos. Why does Milah, circumcision, if it's on the 8th day and it falls on Shabbos, why does it push away Shabbos? not allowed to cut on Shabbos, not allowed to make it bleed on Shabbos. All the things that are connected to Milah are under normal conditions would be prohibited Shabbos. Why is it permitted? And not only that, it also says that Milah has to be on the 8th day. For what reason? So that the infant should have at least one Shabbos before the bris. There must be a Shabbos before bris Milah. Why? So he explains beautifully. He says, Shabbos, what happens on Shabbos? Shabbos, the world goes up to Atzilus. We know that Shabbos there is an Aliyah. Things go up, right? So Shabbos, it goes up to Atzilus. Milah is rooted higher than Atzilus. Milah is rooted in Ak, Adam Kadmon. And so far as Ak is concerned, because and Adam Kadmon, basically, he says over there, generally we can divide Atzilus and higher than Atzilus between, he uses the terms Atzilus and Keser. Keser is Makif. It's transcendent. So the way Ak relates to worlds, and including even into Asiya, it's in a Makif way. It's transcendent. And therefore, these things are not prohibited there. So Shabbos, when it's Atzilus, it's Pnimius, so everything is delineated. This is permitted, this is prohibited, and so on and so forth. So far as Ak is concerned, not. Therefore, but in order to get to Ak, and to get to Ak, you can't get through Isrusul Lasata, from awakening from below. Atzilus you could draw down through awakening from below. Ak you cannot, right? However, in order to get to Ak, you have to have first the awakening from below, which triggers Atzilus, and only then does Hashem bestow the awakening from above, which is even beyond the awakening from above that comes through the awakening of below, namely Atzilus. Only then does Hashem bestow Ak. So therefore, the infant needs to go through a Shabbos, and only then could it reach Ak, and therefore you can have the Bris Milah. With this, the Rebbe is going to explain. He's going to use that in reference to the same idea here, where we have this idea of the neshamas being connected to the Pnimius HaKelim, to the Pnimius HaEir, and ultimately an Ak, and ultimately an Etzem. Tomorrow at 6:30.